I almost clicked on leave meeting now.
That's instinct, no? We tend to click on that.
Yeah. Okay, so who wants to go first? Mansi, I think you read it last. I think you were the first person to read it. You're a mute. Your oh my god came out in mute. So you want to start with whatever you felt about it at large, very generalistic.
See, I picked this book up simply because of the raving reviews on DYRT. Okay, otherwise I don't think I would have picked up a regional book. And I mean, and it has a very catchy cover. That was another thing. Plus, it was, as you said, it's short. So yeah, those were a couple of reasons why. But honestly, when I started reading, I wasn't sure what exactly what have I got myself into? But after the first few chapters, it just becomes so gripping. And I think, the author has managed to get away with a lot of things because it's specifically mentioning, he sticks to the animal characters, but they are just so humanized. You can relate to so many things. The government corruption, which is happening, then the way that, sorry. The way that things change in terms of blessings. You don't know whether it's a blessing or it's something which is a gift suddenly turns into a not so good surprise. It's more an unfortunate. It's very relatable in those terms, how things change over a period. So yeah, and I think because of that, the author has managed to address so many different issues. Probably otherwise this could be one very controversial, so many controversial topics have been touched upon in this book. Very, very smartly the author has done that, and it is gripping right till the very end. Beautifully done, no doubt.
I couldn't help noticing that Manasi said government corruption and an alarm rang out.
What did she say again?
No, he
said
I just
government
got a call.
corruption.
Okay, Somya, I'm sorry.
No. You said government corruption and then an alarm rang out. That is recorded. Big Brother is
Universe
watching.
agrees kind of thing.
that was a really good one.
So pick up from where what Mansi said. I think it actually does reek of being more of a satire on the current state of things and the government and logon ka andhvishwas about certain things which keeps playing from throughout the book. So there are many themes which are running through. There is corruption, there is superstition, then there is the age-old thing about parents at their daughter's place. We can't live there for too long, etc., etc. We should always take something. All that. And that's one viewpoint. And the second one being the thought process of the goats themselves. So while it is not there all the time, but you will see these instances where the goat actually is thinking or talking. While much of it is in third person, but many a time you'll see Poonachi is thinking so and so. She's saying so and so. And as I said, I forgot the name of all the other goats, but her stud goat was in the daughter's house. So they are Poovan. Yeah, Poovan. Yeah, see, benefit of reading it last. That and see, it was, while not exactly the same grade, but it did remind me of Animal Farm by George Orwell. Though George Orwell was much more clued in about it being completely a satire on the human going-ons in the government, etc., and how pigs basically rule us and so on and so forth. This was not as maybe stark as that, but yeah, there were definitely references. And I think Neetul actually posted a very beautiful review on DYT a few days back. So I'm sure she's read the book much earlier because she didn't read it just now for sure. So her review was pretty good, and that also pointed out how the author has certainly made the book, given it a dark undertone. While everything seems happy and hunky-dory at the beginning, it suddenly takes a turn for that. how one by one all the goats seem to either getting sold for being killed or getting killed or vice versa, and then the castration of the male goats. It kind of leaves you with a bad feeling also. So yeah, so that's my take. So I started with Mansi. I'm in the center here. So next is Sridevi. So Sridevi, if you could pick up.
Uh, See, the book starts with a line saying the life of an ordinary this one of an ordinary birth never leaves a trace. So it's all about that was a very it was actually a simple line, but it was very touching. So that it is actually we are going to read about an ordinary life. And then there are so many, like you can say, the evocative way he writes. Sometimes you start feeling that you are witnessing something, or you feel as if you're experiencing something. Especially, I'll start with the end. There are just probably, I don't know how many pages since I read it on Kindle, but a last part where she leaves the body, where Poonachi is just leaving her body. It is described in such great detail. I had to read that, at least two times just to get that, so that it stays with me for a long time. And then, yes, about there are, the main, this one, more than the regime, that is the political references that the author keeps on mentioning. More than that, it was more about, for me, it was more about the way, the goat was portrayed as a feminine, this one. The female part always as having no voice, or sometimes, how it was very touching when she sees her own, this one's body being cut, but being chopped, and that was, it just stays with you for some time. Her own, the Puvan's body, it was chopped, and then that, and then I even like the old woman, the way she treated Poonachi as her own child. Sometimes the banter, the easy banter, and how she scolds the other goats. In the beginning, when she wants Poonachi to take the milk from the other goats, how she keeps on saying, how she keeps on treating the goats as if they are people. Like how she scolds one goat. She says, "Oh, you can just the goat just stops the flow of milk as and when she wants from the udder when the moment Poonachi goes." So she says, "You think you are too smart," or something like that, and scolding and treating them and treating Poonachi as her own child. That was very touching for me. And then the regime part, how they say that they've got ears everywhere. That was also a very, the line that stays with you. Um, and the end part, I liked it very much. There was one more mention which I can relate to, because I love talking to people and all that. It was something about intoxication. Like, toddy and liquor don't give so much of intoxication as talking does. Remember that old woman, a relative comes to the old woman, and both of them keep gossiping, and they just forget about Poonachi. She's taken by a wild cat. She's saved by the old woman once the moment she runs and picks her and all that. But then that line also stayed with me. How talking, especially for people who love either talking or listening to others talk, this line they can relate very well. How tea and liquor don't give so much of intoxication as talking does. Uh, that's it from my side, but I love the book. I really, really love the book. And probably with me, what happens is I go back to such kind of books again, probably after a couple of months or so.
Yeah, thanks, Devi. That was a nice roundup of the book covered. I just, while you were narrating, I just remembered one more point in the book where the male goats were, being herded and castrated by this one guy supposedly, who is an expert at it. And more than that entire procedure, what hit me hard was after he did that, he himself could not bear the pain that he had given those goats.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as per him, it was an entirely futile act and something which is not going to rest well with him again when he looks at his own position with respect to God. So he cries and he's had toddy to drink, but at the same time he cries and actually prostrates himself in front of these goats. So that is also one point where in the story I felt that he's doing this out of compulsion. He's getting paid for it, but he doesn't seem to be happy even though. So given that the book is based in a atmosphere which is mostly rural, where people are poor and they're very, very affected by the vagaries of the weather or the climate there, the drought, etc. In spite of that, if people have those kind of feelings that okay, I'm getting paid for it, but I'm not happy about it. That tells you the essence of that person at large. So that is another point that came to my mind while you were talking about the wildcat story, etc. So Nitul, you're next. You've actually reviewed that, so you can either take us through that review itself or your thoughts about the review, because your review was kind of hard hitting. So you have mentioned that it took you quite a lot of time to actually put your thoughts in order to be able to write that, and that you've actually thought about it before writing.
Yeah, actually, I read this book as soon as it was announced, and I think it was quite a easy read, but very hard on mind. I finished it in like 3 days probably, and I had ample time for, I mean, actually the entire of July, and yeah, I mean, I have forgotten the lines, particularly lines which I really liked while reading. But yes, as Sridevi said about a particular line which has been widely talked about in a lot of reviews also online. That is, no one knew where she was born. The birth of an ordinary life is leaves no trace. So that is very hard hitting. So this is actually the story, an extraordinary story of an ordinary life, which in case they say it's a goat, but you can actually relate it with everyone. Like, we have gone through being, being human race. We have also gone through some inequalities of society, some kind of disparity between the strata of, be it financial or be it casteism, be it even, the black goat versus the white goat, because the blacks have been killed or something like that, the book says. So these kind of disparities we have all seen and maybe experienced. So this life is basically us. So that is what was most hard hitting for me, because it was very relatable. The government is listening and it has ears everywhere. So this kind of satire, this kind of puns that the author has dropped at every page probably, and that this is what is happening in society right now. So yeah, I mean, this book is really I mean, something like, you remember for a very, very long time. And probably, you would recommend to your friends. And good that I came across this in Facebook when people started talking about it, and this was announced as a book review. So thank God I read about it, and I'm very happy that this is something like a keepsake for the entire life. I think this author has written a lot of controversial work earlier, because I was reading about him particularly, and he was banned, and there was a lot of hue and cry regarding his earlier works, and there's a lot of protest, and he was sued. There was a criminal case against him because he has written something very against the government. So he is known for such kind of work to evoke nuances of society that people generally like to ignore. People want to ignore all these inequalities around happening around. because we don't want to see the ugly side all the time. We want to forget about it so that we can go on with our good lives. But this is happening. So this is true and we can't deny from it. So yeah, that's it.
Good point, Setu. Thanks for Priya, moving on to you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that point about which Devi made about talking, I actually shared it in one of the other book groups I'm in also, that talking is more intoxicating than anything else, because that's true for me also. I mean, I literally tend to forget things I have to do when I'm in an interesting conversation, or even it could be even online chatting with someone I know. It's like a drug for me. I should not call it that, but that's basically what it is. So yeah, that stayed with me, and also in the very beginning, how this couple is actually trying to do something good. I mean, they're adopting the goat which was, I mean, abandoned, and they face so many difficulties in trying to do that good. The government makes it difficult for them to get its ears pierced, and they have to go about it in a kind of fraudulent way, though they don't know. They're so scared. It's unnecessary. They're doing something, that is, given their circumstances, they're taking on the goat, and they have to be so scared of doing that. It's like standing in that queue, and the way it's all portrayed, that the government will say that if this one is not pierced, where did you get this? And there are so many obstacles to doing anything. I think that part was, and that was portrayed there. And also, yeah, heavily it is talking about the female of the species. That definitely came through, because in all the choices that are made, you have to be sacrificing all the time, and you cannot have desires of your own, and those kind of things. He's telling it through the female goat, but it's true for so many women even today, because there's not that much freedom of choice in so many matters of who you marry, and especially those things. So I think that is and the earlier book I read, in fact, of Perumal Murugan, is One Part Woman, where he has actually written about this. That's totally about an issue of a couple, how the woman is made to, so that the husband doesn't feel bad. She's made to give up her self-respect. It's like that. So he's portrayed. I mean, he's somewhat of a feminist in that also. He's portrayed that also very well. He has an understanding of these issues. So yeah, and he was banned also for his views because it went against the culture, and it was like that. So actually, I wish I knew to read the original language. It is my mother tongue, but since I don't live in Tamil Nadu, I haven't learned to read Tamil. So I'm sure that it is much more hard hitting in the original language. But even the translation, it does a very good job, I think. Because you just realize, you follow the lives, you don't realize that you're reading about, there's never a disconnect, that you're reading about a goat, and how can this happen to a goat? You relate so well. I mean, okay, this is what he's saying through the medium of the goat, but this is how it applies. It's from the animal farm analogy that you gave, Sachin. It is, I think, there it is international, as in, all the leaders are how it applies internationally. This is far more local. You can say India related. Like, so many things happen here, which he's tried to portray through just the goats, the black and white, and yeah, like you said, the daughter uh, thing of the couple. And I think the way they protected, it's a very bittersweet thing. They adopt her, they take care of her, but they also have expectations of her. Like, she has to do a certain thing, she has to breed with that goat that they choose, and then, the use factor comes in. How useful are you, kind of thing. So that is also kind of hard hitting, because sometimes, you don't meet somebody's expectations, and they feel that they have done so much for you, and you're not doing enough for them, that kind of thing. So through the goat, he's really explored a lot of these things. And yeah, it's the kind of book that you can reread, because there are so many things. I think the more times you read, you'll get more, um, you'll understand it more. It can be analyzed, and that kind of thing. It's that kind of book where you go through it once, you understand something, and then you go through it second time, you see something else. So it's like that kind of read. So that's what I thought.
Thanks, Priya.
I'll just
Shom?
take a
Yeah,
minute before
sure.
Somdev because I remembered a point when Priya said the couple bring up, especially the old woman, she brings up the Poonachi very, with lot of love. Towards the end, when there is a man who comes and takes up her litter, right, paying them, and there are a few, I guess 2 or 3 female goats who are little weak, and the others are all the male goats. And then after some time he comes and tells, that is the for the second litter, he comes and tells that none of the females had survived. And then we recollect what the Bakasuran, he is called as Bakasuran, there's a huge man who gives Poonachi to this old man. He tells that treat her with lot of kindness and treat her with lot of love, only then she'll survive. Then those two things join up, that probably the old woman treated her or brought her up as her own kid. So maybe that is the reason Poonachi survived, and maybe that is the reason the other female goats did not survive when if you see, actually that man is supposed to be a little more better off monetarily than these old couple, but still those goats did not survive. So somewhere you start thinking that probably it is because of lack of love and attention they could not, which the old woman gave to Punachi. Just join the dots with that Bakasuran's words. At that point, I was reminded when Priya said that the old couple brought up this goat very, with lot of love.
Somdev, the last reader of this book.
Thank you. I was trying to figure out how Bakasu sort of fits in with this entire mythology that Murugan has tried to create.
So actually, you have stolen my thunder. My next question was going to be that while we are all agreed that this is more of a satire. So who do you think Bakasuran actually represents if was the real world? So anyway, continue. I think.
Ayo, okay. I don't know actually. I think I'll sort of dither till that discussion comes up. But I'll just go to the other thing. What I felt reading this book is that this seems to be that age-old conflict between freedom and control. There is Poonachi, and people like Poonachi who want to be free, who want to sort of follow their impulses, want to explore the world. There is Kaduvayan, I think the male goat who was castrated, who had found Pretty Nose, I believe, the female goat, and they were in love, and this old man allows them a night and then promptly goes. So that this is like, the old man has control of their destinies. The goats think they're free when they're in the pastures, they can roam around, but they're not. They have invisible shackles around their necks. Their fate is not their own. There's an interesting contrast between goats and sheep, where sheep always look down, they never look up, they accept their fate. And because they've accepted their fate, they may live longer because they give wool. And if you kill them, you don't get the wool. Goats, at least male goats, there's just one reason for them to exist. So goats do look up, and they are free people, but they're leashed. They have invisible leashes, and even when one of them run away, like Punachi as a representative of her kind, she escapes without knowing that she has, and then she spends the night in the forest and vaguely sees the world, not clearly because it's moonlight, so it's from behind the curtain, translucent curtain. She vaguely sees the world just like Plato's cave. But she understands that there is more to life than what she has experienced, and she can have the freedom. And she could have. She could have just stayed there. She might have been a predator's meal, but she would have seen freedom. But then she decided to sort of call out for her tribe, her clan, her people. So she kind of decides to get back to her family, which is in this case the old woman, who of course ultimately the old woman and the old man and the humans, that level of humans have control over her fate as well. So she has this thing that she wants freedom. She wants to be with Puvan, and even when she has, Puvan is sort of the next day he's butchered. So it's her son, it's her offspring, and it's the old woman who decides to sacrifice her offspring to the god. So she's not in control. The old woman is in control of her life, the life of her people. But then is the old woman free? Oh no. She's under the control of the officials who come at 10 o'clock and berate people if they speak out of turn. Are the officials free? Oh, no, 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 no. They are under the top level people who conduct inquiries. And so there are these layers of control, layers of power that build up. It's a society, human society. And of course, there are the wonderful Honorable Goswami type informers who are brilliant. In fact, that journalism part was amazing. The whole interview that they took. How do you feel? How do you feel? Oh, we feel happy after like a sort of misfires, and then the journalist, yeah, that's what we wanted to hear. Look at the camera. So this is an extraordinary piece of work, and I felt that it was part Animal Farm, as Sachin and you guys have said. I think it was part 1984, and it does have a very sort of local flavor as well. I think which would probably come out more in the original Tamil. And I read about Murugan, and I actually remember him now because I remember the tweet where he said that Perumal Murugan, the author, is dead, and now on I'll be known as P. Murugan. This happened like 5 years ago because his novel, I think one part woman, that was a novel that angered some of the people, and they didn't like it, and so there was a big hue and cry, and he had to be exiled. He had to exile himself from his own place, and interestingly, that place is the political hotbed now. That place is Kongunad, which is sort of Western Tamil Nadu with a bit of Kerala and a bit of Eastern Kerala and a bit of Southeastern Karnataka. So the whole thing about, I think what I understood from this sort of Perumal Murugan and what he does and how this sets up the politics of it all, the sociology, and of course he talks like the black people, they're systematically culled and they have no control over the fate. It's like the African American slaves in the US. So there are parallels that can be drawn, and I think it has many layers, and I am going to shut up now. I've spoken a lot.
So yeah, that made
I just
sense.
want to add. I just want to add to the controversy that the author has gotten into. So before writing Poonachi, I think he had in some interview had said that in this country, writing about cows and pigs are forbidden. So now I will write about goats. So I think the guy is very intelligent, and his comments are more intelligent and smart.
So I think I agree, and I think even in this book, while I've not written his other works, in this book you see gems. I mean, in terms of the wordings that he uses, the prose, it's actually out of the world. So when Priya says that you can read this book again and each time if you get a different perspective, that itself tells you how well written this book is and the power of the words used, because it can be interpreted in a different manner by every person who reads it, depending on obviously their own internal machinations and what their thoughts are. For example, if someone who's young reads it, they might perceive it completely different. Uh, and if people who are younger like us who read it, then it can be perceived as completely different. And then obviously the older generation might feel differently. So that itself is one of the major uh, strong points about this book at large. So just want a viewpoint here. Now, at least from my perspective, when I started the book, obviously everything was good. I mean, it's a small baby goat, which seemed to have gotten a good future because the old man and his wife both were quite devoted to the goat. But even then, right at the start, I knew that this book was not going to end well for Poonachi. I mean, I had that sinking feeling in my stomach that abhi kuch bura hone wala hai. And I don't know whether you found the end to be tragic or not tragic, because Poonachi seemed to have, you know, being saved of a lot more trouble because of having passed away the way she did. But did you also, when you started reading the book, get that feeling? Did you feel that this book is as dark as it ended up being?
No, honestly, I thought it would be, I don't know. I thought it would be a positive end. Probably they'll just leave it somewhere, but not death. I did not predict death. And thankfully, I did not read any reviews of the book. So the story was a total surprise for me.
I got that feeling. I mean, I didn't predict the end, but this is one of those books where I thought, that now something's going to happen. Like you said, it's something bad is going to happen. That feeling I got because of the very way she's so small, she's denied milk, and then they go to the government. So many the circumstances were like that. That something is going to happen. Then towards and especially when Poovan was killed and all those things, uh, then I felt that okay, maybe he's going to show that there is hope, there's a new chance in life like that. So while I didn't predict the end, it was always like on the knife edge kind of thing, this she's going to suffer kind of thing. Because I mean I read his previous book, maybe that's why he generally writes books portraying the reality. So this one being kind of allegorical and he's satirical. I mean he's actually trying to show how life is for the female of the species kind of in certain parts especially. So I thought that it's very likely that it's not going to be very not positive, as in it's going to show the stark reality. So with that in mind, I thought definitely Punachi is going to you know have a few tears in her life, and that happened. I mean, but the end was kind of. But I think the way the book was written, it was like you kind of ease into it. It's not like you feel bad, but it's done in a way that you're ready for it, kind of thing. So yeah, that is it.
Yeah, I guess it's like, there's that inevitable end, but isn't it good for her? I mean, I don't know. After a point, you're like, let her rest in peace. That's all there is to it.
I had read quite a lot of reviews before I started. This book was always in my radar since a long time. So I have been reading a lot reviews, and I think someone in the DYRT also had posted a review long back. So I think I was a skeptic throughout. The feeling that something bad is going to happen when the old man was buying jewelry for his wife. That was the point I was like dreading. It was like, oh my God, now jewelry is being bought. Next thing will be like they will face some kind of extreme poverty. Next thing is very very. I mean, dark phase is coming. That was one kind of feel that I was dreading, and it happened.
Yeah.
Death was obviously, I think it was an easy way out because that life was miserable. So I think it was good riddance of a life that you can't even wish for your enemy. I mean, she had gone through extremes. So death was in fact an easy way out.
Agree. In fact, one point that others stood out is when those younger baby goats were bought by that unknown person, and the old couple made so much money out of it. But immediately post that, they reached that stage where drought hit the land, and all that money also, in spite of them, obviously he had bought jewelry and stuff, but he still had, I'm sure, money left over. But all of that put together also could not help him because there was nothing for them to buy. I mean, they didn't have anything left to buy. Even them wanting to sell a goat was, having something to sell and not having buyers. So that tells you that how external factors can affect what you actually are, what you might have thought is a position of strength earlier on. But then external factors can be such that you are helpless in that particular place. So now, in fact, taking the current situation of COVID, doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. Obviously there is some difference in obviously your sources, and but I've seen many people who are well to do also fail to get the kind of necessary attention that they needed at the point they required it. So that also tells you that there are situations where anybody can be in a futile position and they really can't do much about that. So how external factors can completely change the way your life is being led. So yeah, Somdev, I think you are missing on this one.
Um, I mean, there isn't much to add actually to this. Yeah, I mean, the comment there that the why the rich man did not come back the third time that Poonachi was going to have a litter, and there's a comment that you can't eat gold. You must have had a lot of money, but you can't eat money. So when when the economy collapses, then I completely agree. When the differences between the rich and poor vanish, and everyone is in the same pool of muck. So yeah, I just I was listening to you guys and I was thinking back to the book, and it has so many layers, and I think it'll take us, at least me, because it's training, uh, much more time to sort of go through each layer, and if you know manage to connect the dots. But at least one fun thing that Sachin you had actually put on my shoulders, but then I'm going to like distribute it, delegate it to everyone. Is that who exactly is Bakasur?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question, and I have not really formed an opinion on that. But I think that is one of the pivotal themes of the book. Who is Bakasuran supposed to be actually? Because he keeps coming at various points in the story. He keeps getting mentioned that this is, and the way that person has been described at in the opening scene where the old man is just waiting by the side of the road or the side of the field, and he sees this huge personality coming from very far, and even when that personality comes closer, he realizes, yeah, he actually is that dog. It's not like it was an imagination. And the way they describe that the person has held Poonachi, who's so tiny, in a crook of his elbow, and all of that, and the instructions passed on, and how he keeps getting referred to during the story, and how the old woman, in fact, I think in a couple of times, she actually suspects whether that person was actually there or not, because she's suspecting her husband of having just made up a story just to cook up some origin for Punachi. So who is Bakasura? I really don't have an opinion on that myself, which is why I'll ask this question out to the group. Who do you think Bakasuran was? Was he a demon? Was he, I don't know. So the name sounds like a demon because that's what we've all grown up with. But other than that, I'm not sure, because he seems benevolent. At least he wanted a good fate for Punachi. And Punachi, as we have all read the book, turned out to be innocent, normal kind of goat. It was not as if she was a demon's child or something just because she was black. Because even the indication, black color. So people staying away, the other goats looking at it, and people making fun of her puny nature, black color, etc. So what? So what's your thought, Nancy? said sad with you again.
Honestly, I didn't give it that much thought as to who or what. It was just incidental that some person, I mean, he's obviously larger than life. He's somebody who suddenly, I mean, he kind of comes across as demoness, as you said, a monster who suddenly appears out of nowhere and gives this goat to the old man who's absolutely skeptical about what he's getting into. He's wondering where and what. So, and then the constant kind of invisible thread throughout, which is there. But frankly, the story just took over. I don't know. Somewhere, I don't think I really went back to wondering who this whole character was, who introduced the goat in the first place. Somewhere, it just did not matter so much.
Yeah, it was more like a presence, I think. Beyond the point, I thought, um, I don't know if it was his imagination. The old man was looking, it was sunset and he just saw the shadow and then it formed into a man. But then he did have some kind of conversation also. So I don't know, it could have been because it's so larger than life. So it's not exactly supernatural, but his belief that someone really wanted him to have it. And also Poonachi was so small. He was trusted with smaller than newborns are usually, and he was trusted with taking care of it, and as though he was a chosen one or something. So I don't know. It kind of gives a you know supernatural twist to the whole thing, but the rest of the story is so down to earth. It's almost like the old man believed that, and he brought it home for that reason, knowing that his wife would not be happy. But he took this responsibility because he believed that something larger than a normal human being had given him this goat to take care of, and there was some meaning to it. Maybe that is what he believed. So from there is where this whole Bakasur. But I don't know why Bakasur, because yeah, we know only as a demon. So or maybe I don't know. Maybe it was his thinking that we generally think the monsters are huge. So that way he felt. Or maybe it is also to show that he looked like a monster, but he was actually benevolent because he was trying to save this boat. So don't go by appearance. So that is one kind of, that is what I thought.
And Devi, your thoughts?
No, I couldn't. I did. It did, occur to me once or twice. Who could be? Because they keep even talking about his return. Like, what would we answer to Bakasuran if he comes and asks for Poonachi? That is them. So at that point, I always thought, would he return? And who is he? Is he from a neighboring village? But then I couldn't, figure out. I couldn't just.
I think what Sridevi said, the answer lies there itself. When we say that if he returns, then what would we say if we can't save Poonachi? Or so I think that itself is related to a divine presence that you believe of that presence. If you're doing something wrong, then you obviously question yourself. You self introspect that matlab, in Hindi how we say that, like, भगवान को क्या मुंह दिखाऊं.
Yeah.
जब भगवान will ask me this, so what can I answer? So I think that is itself your self conscience, your God fearing people generally have. I think Bakasuran is a divine presence for me personally. Divine in sense, it's your conscience that you fear your conscience ki kal ko, that conscience will do a dhikkar on you, that you couldn't even save a goat's child, or you could not even do right to that small creature. So I think Bakasuran is that presence in your life that you are afraid to face if you have done something wrong. And there is one line, like, what sense does it make to own a miracle for an ordinary life? So it is like, somebody has bestowed a miracle on you, whether you can save it or you destroy it, it is in your hands. So even a miracle, when it happens, we always say ki, this is what God has given me. This is something like, out of
Bhagwan
the
ne diya.
hua, so ye Bhagwan ne diya. So that kind of thing you always try to relate ki Bhagwan ne diya. So I think that Bakasuran's presence throughout the book, every time it was mentioned, I felt that, it is as if they're speaking about the god.
There are 2 points on this that I tried to connect while reading the story. First of all, there was this thing about Bakasuran having said that Poonachi would give birth to 7 kids. That itself proved that the old man wasn't lying about something of that kind, because he said that before Poonachi delivered the 7 kids. And it turned out she delivered 7 kids both times that she was, pregnant in the book. So that kind of negates the fact that Bakasuran was imaginary, because somebody would have told him that, and we don't know anybody else who could have told him that. That is one. Secondly, weirdly enough, when that stranger came to buy the kids, and was willing to offer any amount of money, in my mind, I was trying to link back to, he came from another village. So I was like, was he coming from the same place where Bakasuran came? Because he seemed to value these kids more than any other of the goat kids. He wanted Poonachi's kids. He didn't want any other kids. So while obviously the book was too short, for me to reach a logical end to that thought, because while the stranger came twice, and each time when he was asked who he was, etc., the author mentioned that he gave a enigmatic smile or something of that kind, and not really said anything. So obviously the author is trying to hint at something, but I'm not sure if I have actually got the hint or known what it is all about. So these 2 points also rankled in my mind. So other than that, as most of you all have said, that seems to be some presence who kind of has been brought into the picture to give an origin to Poonachi, because otherwise that origin, I mean, the story had to start somewhere. So that's my point. So Priya, you want to say something?
No, I was agreeing. The story had to start there. So that's larger than life presence thing. For that, it was a dramatic start for me.
Yes. Yeah, Shumdev.
2 points. First, the mythological Bakasur in Mahabharata. He lived outside the town of Ekachakra, and his job was to terrorize the people of the town so that they would provide him a lot of food, and if they did not, he would go and eat the people of the town. So he was basically a man eater or a people eater, and he was a demon who would gobble up everyone. So his mythological origins are extremely demonic from that fashion. So big evil guy who was defeated by Bhim. That's Bakasura from that point of view. The second thing is that you find in mythology time and time again. For example, if you look at Kunti's children, Karna's father is the sun. You have Arjuna's father is Indra. Yudhishthir's father is Dharma, which are kind of placeholders for. Yeah, I kind of yeah I had a nice time before I got married. So that way, this old man kind of brings this goat who are kind of like their children suddenly from out of nowhere, and he sort of recounts a tale about a larger than life person who sounds too good to be true. So in my sort of point of view, it probably isn't true. It's basically that he kind of sort of uh, went around and had alliances, and that's what Bakasur is. Bakasur is the placeholder for that. From my part, I know Sachin, you have this. You're talking about the 7 kids, but here's my point. Why is Poonachi a miracle? Poonachi is a miracle because Poonachi's mother gave birth to 7 kids. So her birth is a miracle. What is also a miracle is her giving birth is also a miracle. So the whole miracle business is confined to what society thinks what a woman's function is to give birth. That's it. So from that point of view, it's like the old man has sort of conveniently built up the story to say that, hey, yeah, so God gave me this child and she will bear lots of children. Let's rejoice. So that was who Bakasur is for me. He's just a metaphor and euphemism and perhaps even an innuendo in some ways. So that's what people used to do in mythology, and I think that's what Murugan has done here. Um, uh, yeah, that's my two pieces.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, I think there are a lot of allegorical references. Now, funny how one book can have allegorical references to some mythology or divine presence. At the same time, the same book also have this thing about authority and the government or the big brother, because not once have you actually seen the government here. It's always been some officials who keep coming, and people getting scared. It's better to be honest with them. They will suspect us of wrongdoing. So that completely that feeling of being scared all the time. So I think this book is unique for that fact that it has managed to bring in so many different influences and bring it in the same story. So that itself is unique. So even if I were to compare it with, say, Animal Farm, I mean, there itself you see the difference that here you have that complete Indianness of the book, because ultimately it is a rural Tamil Nadu or South India, if I don't want to restrict it to one state, but rural South India, and at the same time poking satire at the authorities, at the general upkeep that the government has for its subjects, and so on and so forth. So those are but in particular the points that stood out for me, and I know that I'm definitely going to read this book again, maybe 6-7 months down the line, but I'm definitely going to read it again, purely for the factor that this time around I gave it a very quick read, because not only was it a short read, but also given the fact that there was this book discussion coming up, so I wanted to finish it and get my perspective on the story. But it is the kind of book that one wants to read again and again, because it is short. So it's not like you are going to spend a lifetime rereading it. It will be a quick read all the time you read it, and you will get a different perspective each time, because right now, these thoughts about the book have already sunk in and inside my mind and settled. So the next time I read in, I'm sure the reading is going to be a little different, because I'll be looking out very consciously for other angles to the story. Because even in this discussion itself, I've seen various viewpoints, which some of which it didn't even occur to me. So I'm sure even a rereading of the book is going to do the same. So how many of us are going to reread the book? That's quite a lot of hands here.
I was looking for the raise hand, then I realized I was the host, so I couldn't do
that. Right. So any other thoughts of, I mean, if you were to recommend, I mean, some of you have read maybe the author's other books. So if you were to recommend any other book, which one would that? Has anybody read?
I've read one.
Yeah.
I've read One Part Woman. So yeah, I would recommend that. I mean, if you want to know about, it's very specific to the. I think it's set in Madurai. It's specific to the one particular cultural thing there, which is why so much of opposition was there. Also, I mean, he has shown it's about something that actually happens there in one of the festivals around about this time. Actually, they have a lot of festivals, and it happens there. And that book, interestingly, he has, I have not read the sequels, but what he has done is it ends on a cliffhanger, that book. And he has written two books which follow different paths. I mean, the sequels, it's like choose your own adventure kind of thing, but it's two separate books. So one book follows follows a certain path, and what would happen if that had happened. The other book follows the second path. So and both are supposed to be very good. So I think that's well worth reading. I mean, that also raises a lot of important questions. That was a good read. That was my first read by Perumal Murugan. So I like that. I probably have to reread it to get to the sequels and understand everything.
Sachin, you're on mute.
I don't know how it went on that unmuted. I think. So I was just saying that I will definitely look at some more books by the author before reading them. At least look at the summaries, because just this one book has given me a taste of how good he can be with his writing. So another author that comes to mind who actually does that kind of writing is uh, Arundhati Roy. I mean, The God of Small Things was a book that most people either loved or hated. There was no in between for that book. So I was one of the ones who actually loved it. I've already read that book twice, and I'm sure that I will read it a third time also. And it's mostly for the beauty of the language that she's used, the evocative nature of what she's saying, how she describes nature, how she describes feelings, emotions, how she bursts the whatever explosive part is there in the book, the way it bursts upon you is completely unexpected. I mean, you will never, ever, expect that to come upon you. And I say this after reading the book twice, and both times it had the same effect. So I knew what was coming, and that is saying a lot.
Even I loved it. Even I read twice.
Yeah. So that's the thing about that book. So
By the way, Poonachi is also a children's book.
Yeah.
So I had come across this book, and it actually only narrates her when she had got lost in the forest. It only narrates that part uh, uh, for the children to understand that adventure. It is narrated as the adventure of a small goat. But I somehow couldn't buy it for my daughter because I know what comes next. So somehow I felt it's a sad book to buy for a child.
One more part when I read that, just a quick part before we wind up, that losing away in that forest, first she thinks of, just going away, that freedom, the yearn for freedom comes. And then she thinks about the love of the old woman, the tribe. So, as individuals, even if you want to just, want the freedom within you, want to explore so many things, I was just linking, that we start initially you start feeling okay. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this, even if you know that there would be opposition. But then afterwards, you start thinking, oh, what would this have an impact on my family or this person or that person? And then you slowly start, just scrapping off whatever you want to do and then give weightage to. So, in a way, freedom is overpowered by love and society or whatever.
correct. I think that's a good thought. And Nitul, from your point, actually, I was thinking that in my mind while I wouldn't have maybe said it out here, but Poonachi, if a teenager reads it, they would still be able to read it. I mean, there are some parts of cruelty to the animals there, but nowadays teenagers are a lot more exposed to all these things than we are. So all I was saying was a teenager could read it, but maybe they will not be making the higher sense that us as adults who have seen too much of the world would make of it. But it is a book that is written in simple enough language, and even a teenager can maybe read it, and I wouldn't say enjoy it, because ultimately it's not a happy book. So but yeah, it's written in a way that kids can enjoy, and especially that part of the forest experience that Poonachi had, where she spends a night on the side by the side of the lake or small pond or a watering hole for animals. The way the nature is described there, It reminded me of, one of those Alice in Wonderland kind of stories where, the beauty of nature has been described in so many words. So that is what I was talking about, when I said that in the same book, there are so many different facets to it, that just this one chapter itself was so different. So, yeah, so that's a good point, actually. So I think we are well past an hour now of discussing. So, any closing remarks for this book from anybody? Somdeep, let's start with you first.
About the closing of the book, Poonachi dies and becomes a stone statue. Murugan doesn't write further, but one can imagine that since Poonachi was a so-called miracle, 7 kids 3 times or 2 times, and the third time she actually dies with the kids within her. So she would be revered as a goddess. And in death, she would get that sort of exalted position that she probably no person actually should deserve. And it's like when you're alive, she's a breeding machine. When you're dead, you're a goddess deity, and probably she'll become the guardian deity of that village. And maybe because of her sacrifice, there'll be rains and crops, and people will flourish, and the economy will come back on track. And people will talk about how Poonachi Amma, did everything good for them, and 100 years later, people will pray to Poonachi Amma and not the other deity that they would sacrifice goats to, and they would sacrifice goats to Poonachi Amma. So yeah, you live your life as a breeding machine, and after death you become a goddess. So hey, that's nice. That's a cool way to go. So I love Murugan, man. I'm gonna read his books now. He's awesome. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
I just want to say that that point is very interesting that Sundar made, because it is I mean, the suffering of the person when they are alive is so often forgotten when they are deified after the death. So, and one more point was, since Punachi was, she had all these kids, so probably she would become a symbol of, women who cannot have kids would go there and, pray to her, and she would become a symbol of that. But nobody would remember what it took for her, what the suffering she went through. So, often we have all these things associated in our country in particular. It's a big thing. uh, People believe in so many things, like beliefs. You're told, go do this, you'll have children, and you'll have a boy child, you'll have a girl child. So it's, I think that is an interesting point, that after she died and she became stone, literally, and she couldn't feel anything anymore. So you can put any spin on it and say that, here is this goddess and you should pray to her. But then her own life, she didn't see any of that divine goodness. It was what actually made her a goddess would actually have been a great suffering for her. So when we make someone into that's why they're saying that, no, don't make someone into inhuman or a goddess or superhuman, because then you will feel that, they don't have any wishes of their own. They exist just for you to fulfill your wishes. So that kind of thing came out there. So yeah.
Beside anyone who sort of puts human emotions or human feelings to a goddess. A goddess, she's perfect. She had a perfect life. She got everything she wished for. And now she's going to give us a child, especially a male child.
True. I get the paradox in what you just said. So yeah. So I think I'll just go before Mansi, Devi, and Nitul say what they have to. I think this book, after a long time, I read a book which actually made me think. Now, obviously, when we read books which are based on Holocaust, etc., you are left with a unsettled feeling. You are left with a feeling of whatever happened was not good, tragic feeling, the pit of your stomach, etc. So this book was different, that it made you think as to what are the small nuances in this book that are so true and so real that reading them makes you just, you know, think that, oh yeah, this is true. How come I've never noticed it myself before? Even the simple thing like, the ears of the goats were getting pierced and they were getting a number there. And after time, those numbers were getting faded. So people were getting castigated for letting those numbers fade also. So when that official comes to the house, he's saying you're not taking care, etc., etc. So you're getting castigated for something that is an enforcement by the government or uh, the authorities, and still it is your responsibility to make sure that that thing stays. It's not there. They have not bothered to come ever after that and check. So things like that happen all the time. Now suppose birth certificates, death certificates, now they are mandated by the government, but it is you as an individual who are expected to keep them. Otherwise, you are not even a person. You don't have a birth certificate. You're not counted in. So, I mean, things like that happen in our lives for real. And there are many small nudgets in this book, which remind you that these are the realities with which we live in. And it's not just India. I'm sure it's in across the world. Most countries have some of this. So I'd just like to end my uh, you know talk about this session saying that this is that one book which I think at least in the last 2 years I've not read any other book which has made me think so much. And given that it was just a 3 hour read for me as well, 1.5 hour, 2 nights. So that says a lot about the power that his words hold. And there's no, it's not really surprising. And Nikhil said that he was actually sued, and for saying such things or for writing about such things. And it's a very powerful statement to make that since pigs and cows are, you know, not to be written about or not to be mentioned, I'll write about goats. So because the author has made it very clear, if you take pigs, cows, goats, I mean deer for that matter, or any animal, as long as you can equate them to humans, I mean you've done the thing. I mean for your readers, you're already there. So those are my closing thoughts. So Mansi, you want to say something?
No, as I said, it's a beautifully written book. It's very, very simply written, but the way it has been written, I mean, it literally makes you smile, register, each and everything, and especially since it's a female protagonist. We as women, I think we could relate to so many different things which are there, even as parents, maybe, at this stage, different things. And obviously, the general scenario which is happening in the city, all of us are aware about what is happening around us, the world around us. So he has, as I said, he's very cleverly managed to convey so many things in the simplest possible way. There are no high flourished or eloquent language or huge things. It just flows. The flow is just so beautifully done. And everywhere, something or the other, you register and you can relate. It is very, very relatable. So many topics have been touched upon beautifully. I think this author has done an immense job. And as I said, since the way he's done it is very smartly done. Otherwise, they would have never allowed this book to be published.
Probably with his bad experience, he had to do this. I love this book. I'm going to reread it, and that's all because most of the points have been discussed. So I won't go into
Thank
it.
you, Devi. Nitul, you're the one ending the session. So
I think everything has been said. Uh, just to close it, I think it's not about Poonachi also. I feel for the other characters. Everyone has seen some kind of inequality, seen some kind of misfortune. So it's not that just this goat has been subjected to a lot of suffering, but every character has suffered. So I don't think that it's only the story about Poonachi, but as it's the story of multiple characters. I feel for the old man and the old woman also, who are nameless, like there are n number of people in the society who are into something good. They want to do good, but misfortune is is like such a big tragedy for them that they cannot overcome it. It is not in their control, even if they want to save Poonachi. The old woman is constantly making efforts to keep her alive, keep her healthy, but she has no other means. She has run out of her resources. So yeah, it is the burden of that extra misfortune that makes up the whole suffering as a whole. Even a good luck uh, is like doomed. For them, Punachi was a good luck, but they could not save her, unfortunately. So it is basically, my takeaway is that it is a story not about sufferings, but also bonding and deep love for each other. So, which obviously comprises of life, how it is, everything, sweet and sour both. So that's it.
Thanks, Ritul. I think that kind of sums it up for all of us. So actually, I don't know where he got the time to register all these and end it like that, because it was pretty crisp and nice. So I think thank you everyone. I think even though we were only 6 people here, I think we managed to cover a lot of ground here. So and to dissect a book like Poonachi actually takes some thinking, because it is not an easy book to dissect. Well, it could have just been treated as just another story, but we did do that. So this was fun. So thank you, and we'll look forward to next month's meet, whatever book that is. Hopefully, it will be uh, a good book again, because most of these choices are good. And we'll have more participation, because obviously the more the merrier.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone. Have a good remainder of your Sunday.
Yeah.
And
Thank
don't think
you,
about
Mark.
Monday just yet.
Good night,
Chalo.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye. Bye.
Let's take up a screenshot, please.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that should have been done.
No, who's done it?
So they must have surreptitiously taken all shots. I'm sure.
I no, the problem is I'm on my phone
Oh, okay.
because yeah, my study has been taken over today. So I'm on my phone. So I haven't had access to computer, and on the phone you don't get all of them together. So someone with a laptop or something has to do
I can
this.
do it. So can you turn your camera on, Satya?
The other thing that we can do is, we can take the screenshot from the video.
From the
So from the recorded video,
Recording.
that also can be done. But what I'll do is I'll anyway turn the camera on, so that Sachin, you take a screenshot.
Yeah, I'll take a
anyway.
screenshot. Yeah,
Yeah, okay. I'll just turn the camera on. Hang on.
sure.
I'll just make sure that there are no kittens around. So like
That's okay, even if there are
running around.
kittens, goats, we're okay.
part of the crowd.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Say cheese.
Margarita.
Okay, I think I got them. Just give me a second. I'm verifying. ऐसा नहीं हो मैंने ले लिया. When I'm pasting, I'm not getting anything to paste.
Frozen margarita.
Yeah, got it. Perfect. Very nice.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.